Hello fellow book readers, my name is John, and today we are going to go over part 4 of my top 50 favorite short stories of all time. In the previous 3 videos, I've covered stories number 50 through number 21, so today we are going to cover stories number 20 through number 11. Again, as always, this list is very subjective. I'm not over here claiming that these are the 50 greatest short stories that ever existed. They're just 50 of my favorites at the moment. This is going to skew a bit more towards the fantasy side because I am more of a fantasy reader than I am a reader of other genres, but there is a good mix of other subgenres and genres of short stories on this list. I will give you the title of the story, the year it came out, the author that wrote it, where you could find it, or where it was originally published, sometimes both. But with that being said, let's get started. Coming in at number 20 is The Fountain of Fair Fortune by J.K. Rowling, first published in 2008's The Tales of Beetle the Bard. This is a story about 3 witches who wish to find this magical fountain that can grant them fortune and fame and happiness. They have to go through this big adventure to get there, of course, and trials and tribulations happen. They meet a knight who also helps them. Yeah, it's a really good story. It's very, very short. I think J.K. Rowling has come out and said this is her favorite story in the Tales of the Beetle the Bard. I can see why. I love this story. One of the stories that friendship is better than magic and that you don't need magic to actually solve your problems. Some problems are solved through courage and strength and resilience and just friendship. So yeah, that's the moral of the story. I think it's one of those stories where the moral of the story is like really, really powerful, but I also just think the story is very entertaining to read. Like, a lot of fun stuff happens in the story. It's not so tense as other short stories that are on this list, but there are still some moments in there that are genuinely both heartwarming and kind of frightening at the same time. It's a really great story. So yeah, this is one of those short stories that I just really, really enjoy, and it reads a bit younger for like more of a younger audience, but as an older person, I still found a lot of enjoyment reading it because I reread it recently. Okay, at number 19 is Christmas Eve by Jim Butcher. This is a short story from the Dresden Files. It's not actually included in any of the short story collections he has. I read it when I read Battleground because it was included in the book Battleground. Like, after the story, it was like a bonus short story, but you could just find it on his website. It's free to read. This story is awesome. Now, admittedly, I am a big holiday person. I love the holidays. I love the Christmas spirit. And yeah, the story has all that. It's just a story about Harry Dresden on Christmas Eve with his daughter and his found family with Michael and the Carpenters. And yeah, a bunch of people come and visit him. He's building, toys for his daughter, and he gets visits from Mab, and Molly, and even Kris Kringle himself, who is a fairy. Yeah, just a really, really great story. Very, very, very heartwarming. It also has some really, really top-notch humor in it because of all the Christmas puns that are going on. Like, the movie Frozen is referenced. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is referenced. There's a few other different references there that really, really stand out. It's very, very short, but it's also just really, really, really good. Yeah, and it's a story about family. That's the moral of the story, is that family is happiness. And yeah, it just top-notch story. It's one of those stories that will just make you smile the entire time. It's not a story with any sort of tense moments in it or anything. It exists to make you smile, and yeah, I think it knocks it out of the park in that regard. Okay, at number 18 is The Witcher by Andzej Sapkowski. This story is more commonly included in 1993's The Last Wish. So yeah, this is the original story from the Witcher series. It is the quintessential monster hunter short story for me. I can't think of one that I enjoyed more. And I like Monster Hunter short stories. Don't get me wrong, things like Beowulf are classics, but that's a poem, not really a short story. But even if it was a short story, I would still prefer The Witcher over it. Geralt is at his best here. This story reads like a video game. It reminds me of Castlevania in so many different ways. Like, it just has Castlevania vibes all over it. It's a story about Geralt who goes to this kingdom, and the king wants him to kill this Striga, which is kind of like a vampire almost, who has cursed his daughter, but he wants him to take care of the Striga without killing his daughter. But if he has to kill his daughter. That would be fine too. Just get rid of the curse. So yeah, it's really interesting. Very dark, but filled with hope and light in there. And you really get to know Geralt in here. And people think the Witcher series is about monster hunting, and it's really, really not. But this story is. This is the most monster hunter story in the Witcher series, and it's also the first story. So it's a great starting point. And if you like monster hunting stories, this story is gonna hit for you. Like, I promise you that. And yeah, it hit for me. It's great. Like I said, you can find it in The Last Wish. It's a short story collection that was published in 1993. I think it was translated to English in the year 2007. Okay, next up is Darkrose and Diamond by Ursula K. Le Guin. First published in 1999, but more commonly found in 2001's Tales from Earthsea. Yes, this is an Earthsea story, but it focuses on none of the Earthsea characters that you get in the actual novels of Earthsea. It takes place before the series, begins with different characters. And of course, our two main characters are Darkrose and Diamond. One is a witch and one is a merchant's son. And the merchant's son has to choose between love or training as a wizard. And I don't read much romance, but this story is, I would say, romance adjacent. It's the most romance heavy story on the list, probably, at least in terms of the fantasy short stories. And yeah, this story works really well. I love the story. The theme is love, obviously, and I think she nails the nail on the head on this story. Ursula K. Le Guin is always at her best when she's writing very, very, very powerful theming, especially about like feminism and discrimination and things like that. And this story touches on all that at the same time, while also having just like a really sweet romance and like a decision that our main character has to make. It's like a mid-length short story, I'd say. It's not like overly short, but it's not a long short story either. It's really, really good. I know some people would say Those That Walk Away from Omalaws is Ursula K. Le Guin's best short story, and that is in my top 50, but for my money, this is her best short story. It's the one I enjoyed the most. I really love this one. Okay, number 16 is A Little Sacrifice by Andzej Sapkowski, first published in his 1992 short story collection known as The Sword of Destiny, which is actually the second book in the Witcher series, but published before the first book, The Last Wish. It's kind of weird, but it works once you read it. So this is my favorite short story in The Sword of Destiny. I really like this story. I know I just talked about how Darkrose and Diamond is the most romance-heavy of the fantasy short stories on my top 50 list. I think this would be the second most romance-heavy of the short stories on my top 50 list. This story really focuses on the title. Like, the theming of the story is like basically the title of the story. Like, what little sacrifice would you give up for love? Just such a great, poignant short story. The Witcher is really a literary fantasy, and I think short stories like this show you why it's a literary fantasy. It's about powerful theming and about like how these like choices affect life in general. It's not about like the struggles or the wars or the battles that you would see in other fantasies. It's about what's going on in the background with the characters, or not even really the background, the foreground. Just really interesting stuff here. This story is about a mermaid and a man who is with Geralt the Witcher, who meet and they fall in love. And would the mermaid give up her tail to become a human for love, or would the man give up basically life to go live underwater? Which is interesting. Of course, I'm not going to spoil the end, but choices are made, and it really works. It's a really heartwarming story, but it also has like a kind of tragic end. It just works. Andzej Sapkowski, I think, is actually a better short story writer than he is a novel writer. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed some of the Witcher novels. It's in my top 10 series of all time, but his short stories hit on a different level. He is such a great short story writer. I actually have a tier list of all of his short stories from The Witcher on this channel, and I'll link that down below. The tier list is going to look a little bit different because I know The Witcher itself, which is this first short story, has moved up in my rankings since I made that video. But yeah, A Little Sacrifice is my second favorite Andzej Sapkowski short story. Just really, 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 really powerful and great. Okay, at number 15 is The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe, first published in 1842. This story is about a man who has been imprisoned by the Spanish Inquisition and is being tortured and will likely be executed. It's just a straight up horror story, but it's also like a psychological, not thriller, but like terror almost, if that's the right word. And of course, our main protagonist is like a survivor, a real fighter, and he never gives up. And you see the terror through his eyes because the entire story takes place in his point of view. But I really love the ingenious he has of like trying to plan his escape and how he's going to do it when it all seems so hopeless. And as Edgar Allan Poe sometimes does, the story just ends with like a note of like pure terror and hope at the same time. Just really, really fabulous short story writer. Edgar Allan Poe to me is the king of horror, especially in terms of short stories. And this is my second favorite Edgar Allan Poe short story. Also, I think probably in his top 5 most famous short stories. Okay, next up at number 14 is In the Lost Lands by George R.R. Martin. This is his 1982 short story about a sorceress and a man go to this like not jungle, like sort of wasteland area to fulfill a wish that he wants granted. This sorceress is like somebody who grants wish for hire, basically. Yeah, this story is one of his few like early fantasy stories. He was primarily a science fiction writer early in his career, but he did write a few fantasy stories. This is one of them. This is arguably my favorite of the fantasy short stories. It's debatable, but if one of the ones that are after this, because there's another George R. R. Martin short story on this list, is a fantasy or not, but this is definitely up there. This story is just great. It explores his like early ideas on like skin changing and transformation and like magic. He would later write a werewolf story called The Skin Trade, which is a novella, but this like is sort of early on like his thoughts on sort of werewolves and stuff like that. It's very, very interesting, very good, very, very tense. There's a really bad movie that came out based on this short story. Do not judge this short story based on that movie. That movie is nothing like this short story. It's basically they basically share only the title. Nothing else is similar about that short story. And like George always does, he hits the ending. Like he nails the ending. The ending made me scream out in shock. Yeah, the story is worth reading for the ending alone. The characters are very interesting. There's really only like 2, arguably 3 characters that you see in the story, and all 3 deliver. Well, really, both deliver, and then the third one, kind of a minor character, but he plays a larger role in the central plot, if that makes sense. Yeah, just a great short story. You can find it in Dream Songs Volume 1 today. That's the place to find it today. It was included in one of his earlier short story collections from the 80s, but if you want to read it today, just pick up Dream Songs Volume 1. That's definitely the place to read it. Okay, at number 13 is Nightwolves by Jane Yolen. This is a story that was first published in the 1995 anthology known as The Haunted House. It's more commonly found in The Midnight Circus by Jane Yolen today, which was published, I think, in 2020. This story is about a small child who has nightmares and sees monsters at nighttime, which is, I think a pretty common thing for children to have. So yeah, she sees all sorts of monsters. She sees werewolves and ghosts and things like that, and she's trying to figure out how to get rid of all these werewolves and ghosts and monsters. Yeah, and the story's a story about loss and family and things like that, because her parents are going through a divorce and she's scared, and her feelings turn into, sort of monsters and things of that nature. And how does a child solve all this? Figure out how to get like a good night's sleep. Which is just a funny thing to say. Yeah, just really like heartwarming but yet spooky tale at the same time. It's definitely like a children's short story, I would say. So it's a little bit lighter, but it's still got that like spooky element to it. I would call it heartwarming and spooky at the same time, but very like creative. Just read it. It's very short too. Okay, next up at number 12 is The Road Virus Heads North by Stephen King, first published in his 1999 collection known as 999, but more commonly found in the 2002 collection known as Everything's Eventual by Stephen King. The story is about a man who buys a painting at a garage sale, and that painting is quite creepy because it constantly is changing. And the backstory of the painting is the man who drew it committed suicide, and now everybody who has the painting is suddenly disappearing or dying in mysterious ways. And it's so frightening. The story is terrifying, but also just very creative. Stephen King paints the story in such a creative way where it's like you can see everything. It's really, really interesting. And you're waiting for this event to happen in the story, and you're rooting against it the entire time. And it's so frightening. I cannot speak about that enough. This story is frightening because you know what's going to happen, and you're hoping it doesn't the entire time you're reading it. Yeah, just really, really interesting short story. Can't recommend it enough. It is my third favorite Stephen King short story. There are 2 more on this list. Okay, at number 11, and the final story in part 4 of this list is The White Seal Maid by Jane Yolen, first published in her 1977 short story collection known as The 100th Dove and Other Stories. This is a fairy tale about a selkie, so it's a selkie story, which is essentially kind of like a mermaid, but not really, who marries a man on land and has to shed her skin to become a human. And it's about her love for the sea and longing to go back to the sea. Of course, they have a family, so it's also about family. And how is the story going to end? Is she going to go back to the sea or not? And yeah, the story has sort of like not a horror vibe to it, but sort of like a horror elements to it, I would say. It's not a horror story. It's definitely a fairy tale, but it's one of those fairy tales that lean a little bit on the darker side. But not too dark, because it's filled with light and hope and love. And the theme is family and things like that. So yeah, I just really, really enjoyed this story. It is my favorite Jane Yolen story for sure. The end made me tear up. And whenever anything makes me tear up, a book, it always bumps up in the ratings for me. This one definitely did. I can't recommend it enough. And I will say it again, pick up a Jane Yolen short story collection. Any one of her short story collections, they're all great. Okay, and that is part 4 of the list. Stories number 20 through number 11 for me. I can't wait to do the top 10 next week. It's going to be great. But before we get there, let me tell you some other news about videos that are coming up in this channel. I have recently almost finished the entirety of the Dresden Files universe. I have 1 short story collection left, Side Jobs. So once I finish that, I will be doing a Dresden Files tier list. I can see that coming out early next week. But there will be 1 more video coming out this week. I'm going to do my January reading recap. It's a lot of Dresden Files, but there are a couple other things in there that I read, so I'll get that out later this week. And then, of course, next week I will also be finishing the top 10 short stories that I've read. So those are like the 4 videos that will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. I can't wait to get to them all. It's going to be very, very fun to do. But let me know down below if you've read any of the short stories that were included on today's list, or what some of your favorite short stories are. I love short stories. I want to read more of them. I haven't read them all, obviously, so recommend some down below. And as always, thanks for watching.